Welcome to the Learning Corner with Scott and Stacie. I'm Scott.
And I'm Stacie.
And today we want to talk about staffing.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And my question for you is, how do you make that first hire? And we touched a little bit on it last week.
Yep.
But that first hire, how do you do that?
Well, first hire is really it's a critical role because one of the things you gotta bite the bullet on is you're paying somebody else to do some work. And if you've been doing all the work, now you've got to carve out something and say, who am I trusting to hand that off to? And so my advice has always been, in that very critical role, is to hire someone not like you. I did a study, I worked on a study a long time ago. I was talking about your strengths. And, there's this old adage about if you're not strong in something and you're weak in something, practice, 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 work. Keep working at it, keep trying, But I aspire to the other side of it. It's if it's not your strength and it's your weakness, get somebody else who it's their strength, okay? You work on things that you're strong at. So, for you, when you had made your first hire, you didn't want to hire, I don't recommend you hire another entrepreneur. You want to hire somebody.
Heaven help you if you do,
actually. Man, yeah. But you need to hire somebody who can complement your weaknesses. If you're not an organized person or someone who's really good at the bookkeeping side or keeping notes or something like that, you need to hire somebody with those skill sets so that they complement what you're not great at.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's rock solid.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. The first person that we hired was almost the antithesis of who I am.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And I think that was fortuitous that's where we ended up. I'm not sure that we did that by design, but I would advocate that somebody who is going through that process over again to have that be by design, that you want to hire somebody who is the opposite of you. Don't hire another you, because if you hire somebody that's too much like you, you'll be frustrated at them for not doing the things that you're not good at.
Right.
And then you'll try to do those things that you're not good at.
And it's no win.
And yes, and it never gets done.
Right. Yep. So that's what I recommend on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that talks about somebody that's not going to do what you do. That first person, how do you see their role changing over time?
When you go from, like when we grew and went from one employee to 2 to 3, at that point, everybody's doing everything a little bit. I mean, we have roles defined, but you're having to handle multiple hats, kind of put multiple hats on. And so as you grow, one thing you got to realize is that first hire's role is going to change. And so you need to be okay with that. And you kind of need to let them make sure they're okay with that. I'll tell you something that, a shout out to Kelly Good up in Michigan. One of the things that he told me several years ago, and it has stuck with me, and it's very, very true, is as you're growing your business, you have to change your people, or you have to change your people. And so...
What do you mean by that?
Well, so as our organization grew, people's roles have to change, our processes have to change. You can't keep doing things the same way, or you're going to get the same results. If we continued to operate as $1 million company, but I'm now at a $9 million company, I'm not going to get there by not changing some things. I can't just continue to add bodies and not change some of the things we do. And so if you hire people that are unwilling to change, you've got to get them to change, or you've got to change them. And so it's not easy. It's something that nobody likes to talk about. But if you've got folks on your staff that aren't willing to change to help you grow, then you got to change them. And that means sometimes you got to change them out of the organization. And so doesn't mean you don't love them, doesn't mean you don't want them to stay around, but if your vision is to move and to grow, you've got to make some of those steps.
So you may end up the person who is the absolute right person to be the number one employee.
Yep.
Could eventually grow to, the company could grow to the point where that person's no longer a good fit in an organization.
I think that's fair to say. I think as folks watch these conversations with us, we're pretty straight shooters, and we'll talk about stuff that not everybody's comfortable with. And but I'm just going to be honest with you, that's what happens. You know, we look at our organization and we've grown, we've been very successful in it, but our operation today is not the operation it was 5 years ago.
Right.
It has changed radically. It had to, in order for us to grow. Had we maintained things the way we were 5 years ago, we would still be just doing $2 million a year like we were doing 5 years ago. So yeah, I think you have to just have that mindset and that you're okay with change. And you constantly have to be talking to your staff about those things too, is that, yeah, you're doing this now, but 3 years from now, you might be doing something different. And if you don't want to do that, there's nothing wrong with that. You just may not be a fit for the organization anymore.
Yeah.
We still have really good friends that don't work for us anymore that are doing fantastic in their new roles, and we're thrilled for them because they just weren't a fit where we needed them anymore. Doesn't mean they're a bad person.
Right.
Just not a good fit.
Yep.
Change your people or change people.
Right. Is it fair to say that sometimes a company grows faster than some of the individuals inside the company?
Yeah, it can. Absolutely, it can. And I think you have an obligation to do your best to help your folks grow with you. I think a lot of that is helpful by them seeing the vision of where you want the organization to go. One of the things that we've got an organizational chart, and I think that's important so that folks see what the overall plan is. When you hire your first person coming in, if they never see what you want this to be, they're going to have a hard time wrapping their head around it.
Right.
So yeah.
So let's actually back up pre-first hire.
Okay.
And I want to talk a little bit about one of the best small business books that I've ever read is the EMyth by Michael Gerber.
Yep.
Okay. And I don't know if I'm taking away the primary point Michael Gerber intended for me to take away, but the thing that hit me the hardest in that is his conversation about the org chart.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. And what I remember in that is that it's really important for somebody to take and envision, what he says is envision what your company is going to look like when it's done. Okay, you've got this masterpiece that you're going to build, and what it's going to look like when it's done. For me, that's 30 years down the road.
Yep.
Well, maybe not 30 years anymore, but it was when I started, right? For you, maybe let's at least look 5 years down the road and say, what is this organization going to look like from a personnel standpoint when it's done?
What roles are you going to need?
What roles? Absolutely. Yep. And so we took a whiteboard before we made our first hire. We took a whiteboard and we put president up at the top. Yep. Right? Okay. And then we started thinking about the different areas that were going to be necessary. Ours is a roofing company. And now it's grown beyond a roofing company and into more, but let's concentrate just on the roofing company. Yep. And we knew that we needed sales. Yep. We knew that we needed production. We knew that we needed somebody handling the books. Yep. Okay. Yep. We could envision 5 years from now that our sales department would need more than just a salesman. It might need 3 salesmen. Right. And somebody has to manage 3 salesmen. Right. Right. And so we had manager, president up at the top. Yep. And then we had a bookkeeper off to the side. And then we had sales and production were the 2 primary, if I remember correctly. Right. So we put a sales manager and a production manager. Salespeople underneath that, and I think we put 3 on there. Yep. And then under production, we knew that we were going to need, one crew is what we had immediately, but we knew we'd probably get to the point where we had 3 or 4 crews, and a superintendent to supervise. I don't think we envisioned quality assurance, which we've now added as we're beyond that 5-year plan. But and so we envisioned this org chart that had 15 slots on it. When it was just 2 of us. Yes. Yeah. And so what Michael Gerber says is to put the position title on all of these different spots. Yep. And then what you have to do is you have a line underneath that position for the person who's in that role, right? So when you're a one person organization, what you have to do is you put your name in. You want to be president. That's the fun one to fill out, right? Okay. But then your production manager.
Yep.
You know what? In a one-person organization, that has to be you.
Yep.
Because all of these positions have to be done right now in a small organization.
Yep.
Somebody has to produce your product. Somebody has to sell your product. Somebody has to do the books. And somebody's got to be the president orchestrating all of this. And so your name is going to go on every single position.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then as you make that first hire, when we took a look at it, we said, okay, where do we need someone now? What's the most critical role that we can hire someone to fill that role that would ease things off of you so that you could then do another role better?
Right.
Spend more time there.
Right.
And so, yeah, for us at the time was another salesperson.
Yes.
So we had another salesperson. Then once we had the 2 salespeople, the next critical role we looked at was we need somebody that can answer the phone and help do the books in that role. And so, but at the time we were able to show folks, this is where we think we want to go. So there's movement available, but I think the bigger thing is it lets your new hires know that you've got a vision for big things. This isn't going to be just 2 people from here on out 30 years from now.
Right.
And so I think we didn't have it defined as well in the super early days, and we didn't show our new hires.
We didn't show it.
And that was a mistake of ours. We didn't have people coming in knowing that's where. Nowadays we've got 2 places in our office, one in the hallway, and then one in the conference room that have a big white, a sheet of paper we had printed out that has the roofing company and all the positions there, the HVAC company and all the positions there, and the other potential businesses that we plan on starting, 4 or 5 of them. We might not do them all, but when folks come on board, they know that we've got a vision for things. And so, one of the things I always tell new hires is stick with us, and you can go places, but you probably won't be in that same role forever unless you want to be.
Right.
But we're going to need folks in other areas. So as I have young folks come in, you've got an opportunity to go several different paths that you might want to do. So you got to stay open-minded to those things.
Yeah. And one of the important things that I took away from Michael Gerber's book, The EMyth, again, was that when you fill a role, your temptation is going to be that first salesperson, put them in as your sales manager, and don't do it. Okay, put them in, fill them in at the bottom.
Yeah.
They come in as a salesperson. Now you can strike your name off of being the salesperson, or maybe now you have 2 salespeople, but your name is still on that sales manager role.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
and you can't abdicate managing that person. You've got to control what your sales process looks like,
Yep.
and you've got to, as that sales manager, you've got to debrief that person after their sales calls and figure out how they can continue to get better. So now when you're just the salesperson, you're worried about yourself being the salesperson and you're reading all of your books about how to be a better salesperson. But when you hire that first salesperson, now your role as sales manager becomes very, very critical. And I wasn't really very comfortable with being a sales manager over somebody initially. But if you're going to grow, you've got to realize that that's where you've got to be. And eventually you'll hire a couple more salespeople. And then at some point you'll realize, okay, I've got to move out of this sales manager role because I'm neglecting my other roles.
Right. Or if it's not something in your skill set.
Oh, exactly.
I think that's one of the things that I've learned a lot through this time, and my coach has worked with me on is about making sure I hire folks that do things better than I do, and bring on folks that I can hand off stuff to and be very comfortable with. And so, as someone who is not as entrepreneurial as you are, and I'm a little bit more risk averse. That took me a little bit of time, but once I've done it, man, now I've got a management team that is just, amazing.
Yes.
And so they're able to take things that I can say, here, I'd like to have this done. And I've hired folks that have the caliber of that I want to be able to take these things from me so I can go off and do other things that need to be done.
Right.
But part of it is having that organizational chart. When we sat down and did the big one for all the companies, I had those management layers in there. I knew we were going to need a marketing manager. I knew we were going to need a production manager and a sales manager. We've got an HR manager. Those roles. So I've always been thinking in my mind, as I hire the next person, what they can do even in a few years. Because we don't have all of our spots filled yet. We've still got open spots that have our names on them of things that we have to do. But as I'm hiring somebody for a role, I might see that they've got a potential to feel something else as they mature and as they grow. And so having that laid out has really helped. It's really been a path for our growth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Another big concept, and we probably won't take time to explore it fully here today anyway, is that the concept of working in your business versus working on your business. And as I recall, that's a Michael Gerber concept as well. That was my first introduction to it. I don't know if people had talked about that before Michael grabbed it, but another big impact of that on me. And so the temptation for most people who start a small business is to go be a roofer. For me, it was to be a roofer, to go sell the job and make sure it got done, right? That's working in the business. But then you have to be working on the business too. And ultimately, the president is the person who is responsible for working on the business.
Right.
And so if you are going to maintain that role as president and you're going to rise to the top and keep taking your name off of things, eventually your job is 100% to work on the business and 0% in the business.
Yep.
And when you first start, that's not possible to be only working on the business.
Right. Yep. I think that's a whole topic within itself that we could talk to.
I think so too.
So, all right.
So let's wrap it up with that.
Okay.
And just want to remind you, this is the Learning Corner with Scott and Stacie, and we thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us.